Good morning. Welcome. Good rainy morning, I guess I should say. This is the November 20th Land Use and Livability Subcommittee. We are joined on the phone by Councilwoman Williams, and our Vice Mayor is here, and so we have a quorum. So let's begin calling the meeting to order. And we have one call to the public. Jerry, come on up. He's like part of our subcommittee. Have you noticed that, Betty?
Yes, I have. I have noticed.
Morning, Jerry Van Gass. Thanks, committee members. Funny thing happened to me last month coming to this meeting. I flew in from Fiji on October 16th, expecting to go to a meeting a week later on the 23rd. And, I always like to get a chuckle before I turn in at night, so I turned on Channel 11, and they were playing a tape of the meeting because I recognized the subcommittee. And I said, well, I guess I missed out on that. And I've got a copy, a DVD of the meeting, which I haven't looked at yet. And obviously I haven't missed much because, frankly, in a month, nothing more has transpired that the public has learned of regarding the Choya Trail. And, we're still puzzled, especially, the bottom line is the public, the hiking community, parks employees, etc., still feel like they're in the dark as to what's going on, who's calling the shots here, and and the refrain I keep hearing is, "We're not going to believe this is happening until we see it," and their other major concern is they feel that the city is way too cozy with developers, and you're not going to change that until they see otherwise. And we keep waiting. We've got these deadlines that keep coming and going for 2 years now on a final design for this trail, and nothing has materialized. The last deadline, 120 days, expired last week. And we keep waiting to see something tangible. So that's where we're at. And, now we're into the holidays, so we don't expect anything to move very fast now. But, we'd like to see some signs of progress. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. I think we're going to get an update today on some of the activities of Parks and Recreation, and maybe we can ask. So the first item is minutes of the meeting. Have everyone reviewed it? Has everyone reviewed it? Can I have a motion then?
Motion.
I'll second that motion. Oh, there she is.
Cheers.
Welcome, Councilwoman. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. So our next is our consent action items 2, 3 through 4. Do we have any requests to have anything heard? Okay, can I have a motion then?
Motion.
Second. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then items 5 through 6 have our information. Is there anything that you want pulled off to discuss? Okay, then let's move to our first discussion item, which is the Latino Cultural Center. Item 7. Welcome. So, are you going to start us off?
I
Karen?
will
Okay.
do that. Thank
Thank
you. Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee, I'm Karen Peters, Deputy City Manager, and we are here to talk about where we are with the Latino Cultural Center. As you know, Mayor Williams created an ad hoc committee to look into that issue, and the Vice Mayor is our current co-chair. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Mitch Menchaca, our Office of Arts and Culture Director. He will walk us through where we are.
Great. Thanks, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. So this project has been on the minds of some for 17 years. The project started in 2001 when a city bond was funded to the Museo Chicano, which was an organization that resided at 147 West Adams Street in downtown Phoenix. The organization had some stability issues in the Office of Arts and Culture, then worked with them on capacity building to obtain those funds, financial planning. But unfortunately, in 2008, the organization closed, and the city then decided to hold those bond funds for a future Latino Hispanic capital project. In 2009, Arizona Latino Arts and Culture, ALAC, moved into that space, taking over the lease, but not the bond funding. In 2016, the Office of Arts and Culture hired a consultant to conduct an environmental analysis for a new Latino cultural center. And with that, a cultural needs assessment and feasibility study was completed in 2017. And as Karen Peters mentioned, in 2019, Mayor Williams created the Latino Cultural Center Ad Hoc Committee. So to talk about the cultural needs assessment and feasibility study, sometimes we'll talk about it as the study or the 2017 study. It was centered around extensive community engagement. It included 23 one-on-one interviews with artists, arts organization heads, leaders in the community, site visits to arts organizations and facilities in Phoenix and the surrounding areas. It included 3 public town halls, 2 focus groups, that engaged over 150 participants, and then an electronic survey to reach those who couldn't participate in person with over 250 respondents. What we learned out of it is, no surprise, the rapid growth of the Latino population in Maricopa County. We also learned that there's administrative gaps in existing Latino arts and cultural producers in Phoenix. And when I say producers, those are formal arts organizations or individual artists or businesses having challenges with success and sustainability. And the residents expressed a need for an inclusive space that would bridge the many streams of the Latino experience for Phoenix residents and visitors. Out of the study, the center should be inclusive and accessible to all residents of Phoenix. It should be multidisciplinary in programming for all ages, and an administrative conduit for those Latino arts and cultural producers, and programming should include festivals, classes, exhibition performances, and artist-led events. The location, from the study, there was a desire for a visible Latino cultural presence in Phoenix at the heart of the city's cultural core, that the center should be on par with Phoenix's other major cultural institutions and art centers downtown, be along the light rail and public transportation, but no specific site was identified in the study. The facility asked for a 22,000 plus or minus square foot facility interior building with access to 18,000 plus or minus square feet, 18,000 square feet of programmable outdoor space, ample parking. At the time of the study, it was estimated that it would cost between $3.7 and $4.5 million. The following site options should be considered: either new construction on city-operated land, rehabbing an existing city-operated building, or doing a mixed-use private partnership with a private development on city land. A business plan, 2 proposed management structures were highlighted, including an independent nonprofit taking it over, or a hybrid where the city would invest into it for a startup. A recommendation from the ad hoc committee is that the city run it for its first 5 years and then incubate a nonprofit or a collective to take over the administration. So the Cultural Center Ad Hoc Committee, chaired again by Vice Mayor Guardado of District 5 and Councilman Nowakowski in District 7, does have 14 members from every district in the community. They've been working on this project since April and have been meeting monthly to do the good work. Their charge is to develop a strategic plan that includes the business operation, the fundraising, and the programming strategies, as well as citing the location based off of that 2017 study. The ad hoc committee meets monthly, but also has 3 subcommittees: programs and services, fundraising and partnership, and site and operation. And those meetings are open to the public, and they can also participate on any of those 3 subcommittees. Just a note that the committee is to sunset on June 30th, 2020. Programs and services. They have 3 strategies that they've been working towards, including maximizing community input, impact, and creating programs that don't duplicate or compete with existing organizations. That's Latino-based organizations, regular nonprofit arts organizations, social service organizations. We don't want to create duplications, but we should also identify programs and potential gaps and promote partnerships and collaboration. But the end goal is to increase visibility for Latino arts and culture through programming. They're currently tackling a couple of questions, including who's missing from the conversation. We had the great turnout from the 2017 study, but who's missing? Formal organizations, collectives, individual artists, schools. And with that, they want to start pop-up programming around the city to get people excited about the project that could be citywide, and potentially sites to create Latino Cultural Center affiliates, much like the Smithsonian and their affiliates around the city. So if we did something in Maryville or North Phoenix, those sites could be potential LCC affiliates. Another question they're tackling is about who gets to use the building, the calendaring of the building. We are looking at a Dallas Latino Cultural Center model that has 3-tiered programming pyramid, where the first tier is for the, quote, resident Latino arts and cultural producers doing those non-duplicative programs, partnerships. The second tier on the calendar would be the curated programs, including classes, exhibitions, film series, things that are missing. And then the third as a rental space or for other community groups to utilize. Fundraising and partnership has been heavy on the minds of the ad hoc committee because they're to draft the fundraising plan to strategically reach the capital financial goals, to create a case of support that will speak to donors beyond the construction phase, but to set the realistic fundraising goals to create the optimal center. We've been talking a lot about capital campaign processes, including conducting a fundraising feasibility study to see if millions of dollars can be raised in the community. Our subcommittee is very gung-ho that we can, but we want to do it right, but also determine the budget for the campaign and craft a communication plan. So they've been working on this piece. But in our conversations, the biggest question is, what are we fundraising for? We've been talking about a concept for 17 years. We need something more tangible. So the what became the location. And so a lot of attention got put on finding the site selection, because now that once a site has been selected, then we can start the financial planning with a capital campaign consultant to create that plan, because there's only currently $997,902 in bonds available. So ultimately it was decided to look at the site first. So it moves us to site and operations. They are to identify the site using the study, determine the real cost of the construction of the center, and determine the operational structure, which we talked about earlier. We also toured other communities. We looked at about a dozen or so communities through research and visited 2 communities, Albuquerque and Dallas, because they are both Latino and Hispanic cultural centers that are run by governmental entities who have had ebbs and flows like our process. The Albuquerque one is a 22-acre campus. It's a little larger than what we are wanting to build, but beautiful and has the kinds of programs we want, but also has resident companies like the New Mexico Philharmonic. So it was a $56 million project out of our scope. Dallas, though, was a $9.8 million project, a 27,000 square foot, run by the city, has a Friends of Latino Cultural Center, and so we took some best practices from them. The Latino cultural site selection, from the study, it asked to look in the downtown core. But our ad hoc committee asked us to look outside of the traditional downtown boundaries to gather more information so that we could look both in and out of downtown. Thanks to Community and Economic Development and Planning and Development, we researched other city-operated properties. We looked in downtown, but then we spread it out and went from mountain to mountain, freeway to freeway to look for sites, and had about 10 sites to look at. Unfortunately, as you get outside of that downtown core, the building requirements become a little bit different. You can't build up, you have to build out, needing about 4 acres of contiguous land. Some of those sites had already had uses or environmental concerns, so we went back to looking in the compact downtown area. And ultimately 4 locations were selected for further research, including a parcel next to the Herberger Theater Center, the North Building at Hance Park, a lot by the Public Market, and the Regency Garage. Ultimately, our ad hoc committee decided on the North Building on East Monroe and North 3rd Street because it's an existing city-operated building, has the square footage, access to outdoor space, parking nearby, located downtown, access to light rail. We did bring this recommendation to the Parks Board, who approved it on October 24th. The current estimate to rehabilitate the building is about just north of $12 million. But that includes additional funds for future furniture, fixtures, and equipment to ensure that we can open it. But we are going to do an updated architectural assessment to get formal pricing and potentially a phasing plan. But the fundraising and subcommittee proposes that we contract with a capital campaign consultant to start the financial planning once we get those true costs. Just a rough draft timeline that we presented to the Parks Board. We want to do a deep dive of the building, start that process in 2019, hire a capital campaign consultant, get the plan and recommendations to mayor and council no later than 2020, hire an architecture firm, start the capital campaign planning to continue till we reach our goal through 2021, do some pop-up programming, so that in 2022, we can really get into the construction phase and open in 2023 when the Super Bowl's here. Hans Park will have most of their work done, so it'll be a celebrated time in Phoenix. But before we can do that, we need some recommendations from the subcommittee, including requesting that this subcommittee recommend to City Council the approval of the North Building as the site for the Latino Cultural Center, and to recommend that we conduct a request for proposals to select a capital campaign consultant to assist in the financial planning.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Vice Mayor.
So, well, thank you so much. I know that it's, and the number that sticks in my head is 17 years, right? So I think hopefully from now on, now we can accelerate the program. But I just still want to be able to point out from the presentation that I just still want to make sure, right, that when we're out there and we're talking to the community, because part of the reason that I was okay with the location, right, is that we're gonna create a Latino cultural center that is gonna bring people from different parts of the city, right, that will truly enjoy it, right? Like, I want to make sure that we're at a place where we bring West Side to the Latino Cultural Center, that we bring the South Side to the Latino Cultural Center, right? That we're actually able to do events, being able to run programs, you know, by our constituents that have the talent, right? That we put that talent out there through our cultural center. I think for me that's the only thing that we didn't elaborate as much here, and I get it, but I just want to put it on the record that that's one of the goals that we really have to meet. And how do we like really celebrate, you know, different things that are important for our culture, right? Like whether it's El Día del Grito, El Día de la Virgen, different things, right, that are very important for our constituents. I just want to make sure that we just really take that in consideration. And it was part of the reason why I really liked this site, you know, because we can open it up, we can connect it to the park, you know, like, you know, I'm from California, so the image that sticks in my head is Placita Olvera, and how do we recreate that here in Phoenix, and people can come and enjoy it and be part of it as well. But I'm very happy. I know that you guys have been working really hard on this, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman?
Yeah. So we had this conversation. I completely disagree with the location. I think a couple of reasons. I think the community won't be there. It's not accessible. Having walked it last couple of weeks, as different kind of condos and other places develop around it, I think it becomes even less accessible for people to come to it. I had an artist call me about it and say our communities were redlined and weren't allowed north of whatever Van Buren or the tracks. And so how can we set something up like this where our communities weren't even allowed? And so I'm hesitant to be in favor of the North Building. The other thing that I don't like is that the Super Bowl's the goal for it, right? Like that's the date that we need to be ready for. I think I agree with the 17 years, but I think because we've waited so long, I see the Dallas one and I see the Albuquerque one, and I think we deserve to design something that fits the community, that's designed for the types of uses that you talked about, whether it's concerts, whether it's events. You know, we usually do Cinco de Mayo. I know the Cinco de Mayo festival is not going to be able to happen downtown this year because of the light rail construction. And so to me, it's more how do we build in that mindset. And so, I mean, I know it's been a lot of work, but my recommendation would be to go forward with number 2, but not number 1. And I would like to explore a little bit more on different sites. Again, coming a little bit late to the process, but that's my opinion and the conversations I've had with folks, particularly in the arts community, is that the Hens Park, the North Building, is not what's needed.
I guess by way of question to the councilman, are you thinking of exploring like along the Rio Salado area or?
Yeah, so some of the quick ideas, I think, yes, I think the airport land reuse area, there's some Another thing that comes to mind is you think of Booker T and the amazing work that was done by the African American community there. And it was a historical significant site that is now a museum that can host cultural events, that can host different community events. I think there's some spaces like that in the Latino community. We have Santa Rita Hall near downtown. That's a place where Cesar Chavez did a 25-day fast. We have a South Central light rail project that's going into the community that I believe we have some NSD properties right by the light rail that could reinvigorate an area that can be used there. And so, I think I know that the committee's in a rush and we're wanting to get this done. And there's that bond money just sitting there. But I do think that an investment like this is gonna be hard to come back from or move later. And so I'm 100% committed to number two and making sure that a beautiful, great space is created. I just think that even in the fundraising and just thinking in my head of how I'm gonna help you fundraise, it's gonna be harder for me to pitch the Hans Park location than it would be an actual historical relevant location for the Latino community.
So, Mitch, maybe you can speak to some of the other sites you looked at outside the downtown. A lot of them dealt with, what, zoning or property size?
So there was land use trying to find 3 to 4 acres. There were some of those sites, as the councilman mentioned, with NSD that they're already used for other purposes, and so that's why those sites were not moved forward with the planning of the Site and Operations Subcommittee.
So maybe, Vice Mayor, you can speak to what the committee's done. I know you've been involved in it. You have any thoughts?
Right. I mean, I know that. I know that everyone has been working really, really hard on this project for a very long time. I am very, but at the same time, I'm very compelled by what the councilman is saying as well. Like I think, like I've just like sit here the last 3 minutes and really thinking about this. So maybe we should look at other locations. I do. I do want to make sure that we do this right. I don't know if Chris, oh, here she is. If you can just talk to us a little bit about, because I know there was a big spread of ideas. I know that it wasn't like, oh my God, we're going with this one. So if you can just talk to us a little bit more of how we landed here. Yeah, and then from there we can talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely, Madam Chair, Vice Mayor. As we looked at, Mitch's office brought in Planning and Economic Development to look at additional sites in the area, as the community group wanted to see not just what was in downtown, but in the wider area. So we went mountain to mountain, and we went I-17 to the 51 is the area that we looked at. And some of the other sites that we came back with are exactly what Councilman Garcia is talking about. It was the southeast corner of Broadway and Central, right on light rail. It was the southwest corner of Fifth Avenue and Broadway, the NSD property that you're speaking of. It was the aviation land reuse area, and it was with the corner of 7th Street and Buckeye as well. So we looked at a number of other properties. And as we move forward to Mitch's point, once we step out of downtown, we need larger property than what we would need in downtown, because now you need surface parking, you need the outdoor space, you need to build your building. So we were looking 3 to 4 acres that were contiguous space that had frontage on certain areas. The two that kind of rose to, and Del Rio landfill, that was the other one. We've got about 20 acres of parks property at the Del Rio site. The two that kind of rose to the top are exactly the two that the councilman's speaking of today, which is the NSD property and Broadway and Central, both of which have environmental challenges that will need to be remediated as they move forward. One has been planned for workforce housing, which would be the Broadway and Central property. So that had been housing and NSD had been looking at that for a workforce housing location. And so we moved away from those two particular sites. The Del Rio landfill sits 20 acres in the middle of a 156 acre former landfill, and it felt like 4 acres would be really isolated in that particular area, although it's on the Rio, so it pays great homage to the area and would be a great catalyst for kicking off the Del Rio project. It's only 4 acres sitting in the middle of 156 acres. So it kind of felt like it would be a great part of another larger project, but by itself seemed a little isolated. We looked at the aviation land reuse area, and Councilman, you're working with me on another project in that area right now. Finding 4 contiguous acres. When you look at an aerial, it looks like there's all these sites that could potentially be that particular location. But 4 contiguous acres, there's only one site that can get you right now to those 4 contiguous acres. And they're kind of buried back in 7th Street and the Buckeye area. That would be kind of the northeast corner of 7th Street and Buckeye. And getting, there's buildings that line 7th and Buckeye, so it'd be kind of tucked back in that particular area. And we did just as deep a dive as we possibly could. Now, of course, there are lots of privately owned properties that given the council's direction, if you were to tell us to go out and bring back privately owned properties, there are any number of privately owned properties that could meet that requirement. But then we're focusing money on land as well as building, so our price goes up a bit more. From the city standpoint, we really did. I spent 2 weeks driving around and looking and validating sites, and ultimately it came back to the north building was also an easy area for the fundraising to phase. It could get the building open more quickly and then be able to add additional components since we weren't dealing with a new building.
I know that Councilman Nowakowski has been a part of this from day one, and I think he probably had some of the same concerns you did, Councilman, but I think I shouldn't speak for him, but I got a sense that he thought they were moving in the right direction. Was that your?
Right. I mean, I had a lot of the same concerns. I said, why don't we do this in South Phoenix, West Phoenix, where our people live? Like, that was my initial reaction. And then when I heard your report and then talking to Councilman Nowakowski, I know that we were looking at it as well from a fundraising perspective, and from the options that we had, it seemed like the cheapest, the most economic way to go was with this building, which is what I think the ad hoc and the committee was very moved by, was just the pricing. That's the reason why I'm pushing really hard, right? And I've been talking to Mitch about this, that we need to go, council member also talked about, we need to go see El Paso Community Center, right? And being able to look at the Placita Olvera in Los Angeles and Plaza Mexico, and how is it then that we bring the resources into the cultural center, so people from the south side and the west side can feel welcomed in. I think that was the only one thing that I said, okay, I can be for this building if we're gonna make it accessible and welcoming and opening it up, to different artists that would, that we could actually bring in and be part of this.
Is there any way that if we move forward with this recommendation, both recommendations, that we could maybe have a caveat that if our capital campaign is more successful, that we could revisit the sites? I'm just trying to think of a way, because I understand what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it's about the economic development that also comes with this site, right? And I think if there's restaurants, there's shops, there's theme things that can then expand through it. The space where we're thinking now, it stunts it. It stunts any further growth or any greater community, right? If we're thinking of expanding other markets or different things around it, I think it's not available there. And then that's another reason why I think it's just we lack kind of the vision, and a lot of times because something comes cheap, we want to just run into it rather than actually thinking about what we deserve and how we can grow or even interject more development into an area beyond this culture center. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of those things, whether it's cleaning up those lands or whether it's exchanging for other private property, whatever, I think we could figure it out. So again, my recommendation would be more to do number two. And I know that puts it harder because that people wanted something to fight for, but I think if we can just kind of also use the process of looking for a site again, or figuring out ways to do it to fundraise. Again, and I'm not in the ad hoc, and like I can commit to participate more, and I obviously care about this a lot. But yeah, to me, I think if we do something like that, I think the north building is the easiest thing to do, and we end up just doing it there. So that's why I wouldn't be able to just support number one.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Councilwoman Williams.
thank you. First of all, I want to thank the committee for all the work they've done. It's gone a long way in a short time, after 17 years. And I'm concerned that I understand what Councilman is saying. I am concerned we have had that conversation for 17 years. And I would like to see us move ahead on both of these, knowing that this doesn't have to be the ultimate Latino cultural center. It could be the beginning. And if we could find some people to donate some land, especially some that have been here for generations, that have been involved in the community. There's some wealthy people out there that own a lot of land in areas that would be, to me, even more appropriate, but would also generate a new marketplace, a whole new area that could celebrate not only the cultural, but it would bring in additional economic development, as the councilman wants. So I would hate to see us stop short on this, because that's what's happened 2 or 3 times in the last 2 decades, because we've talked about this forever. And I don't want to see it stop now. I think the community deserves something and know that we can go forward. But I also think as the process goes through and you hire on a consultant, you continue to look for a second option that can perhaps be an additional option that could really get energized in the community, do real fundraising, and really get something more. I mean, I'd like to see something like New Mexico, quite frankly, that would really bring in a whole area that would just be unique, would be something we can celebrate and appreciate by the entire community. Going back to the presentation, I would like to throw forth more outreach into some of the schools, and I know Prairie Goldwater High School is looking, and I think if you went there, you would be highly surprised at the students, the cultural mix there, and the fact that they have absolutely top-notch programs, including a lot of art, and I would encourage you to do so. So I am supporting items 1 and 2, with the caveat,
Yeah.
don't limit it forever.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I also, when you were giving your presentation, you said one of the hurdles for the capital program was having a location. So at least under recommendation 1, we have a location, but I do like adding that caveat or direction to continue to look at other locations as we raise. But was I correct in your presentation that part of the problem for the capital was you needed some location to start the dialogue?
Yes, Chair Stark and members of the subcommittee, it was hard to just keep talking about concept, and having a location for people to say, I can donate to something that is physical, was the conversation piece that started the impetus for the capital campaign process.
I appreciate it. Councilman?
And I think that that's without a consultant, right? That's just the committee itself with perception. And I think if we can find the right capital campaign consultant and pitch a dream of an actual place that can be built from the ground up. A good consultant is able to pitch that just as well as a site that we're going to redevelop. Especially if we could add these other features of we're trying to actually promote growth, we're trying to do all these other things, and that this is deserved. And so that's why I think that's kind of we're settling excuse rather than saying, look, we can hire a campaign consultant to fundraise the capital on a site that we want to dream up and be able to actually dream up. Aviation department did a great job in the land reuse area. And again, I'm not saying it has to be there, but they added some, and that's kind of also what opened up my imagination. They did the entire plans of what that community redeveloped could look like. And I think a consultant can definitely generate that. And then we could, obviously show Albuquerque, show Dallas, show Placito Olvera as the dreams of what we want. And again, committing myself, because I'm opening my mouth to this, to also fundraise and be a part of this dream with it. And I agree with Alda. And I don't know what's happened in the last 17 years. Been here 5.5 months, but definitely wanna be able to push for this. If there's a way to, and I know that your timeline said that you'd start going in January to the North Building. So what does that mean if we approve? Let's say one next at the council, you would be able to start spending the $900,000 in the site starting next January.
So, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we would start to spend that money on the architectural assessment to really get in there with the nitty-gritty and find out what it takes for electricity, lighting, heating, and the potential phasing process that my colleague had mentioned that could happen there. We probably could still do an assessment of the building because it is a city-operated building, but those bond monies would be used if the approval of the North Building for this. And I also just want to point out that the reason why the North Building has not necessarily been the cheapest, that's not really the conversation that's been happening. The subcommittee and the committee has been using the 2017 study as their guide, as directed by the ad hoc, which did state those things about having it in the downtown on par with other cultural institutions. So that is where it was, and it was one of the cheaper sites out of those 4 that we did the deeper dive. But I just want to not keep that it was the cheapest option, and that's why we're going with it.
So, do we have a motion or any more discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I would make the motion if we just put the stipulation in there that we will look at other buildings as well as we're moving forward, and that council member is going to help us figure that out as well.
You got a lot of work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Second? Okay. So let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay. Motion passes. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for all your hard work. I know you've been working on this a long time.
Appreciate it.
All right. And now, Councilman, you've got a lot of work coming up because you're going to be out there helping look for some additional sites. Great. So our next item, number 8, is state and federal legislative agendas as it relates to land use and livability. Welcome, Frank and company.
Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. Thank you for allowing our Office of Government Relations the opportunity to share with the subcommittee today the items from the draft legislative agenda for your review and approval today. I'm Frank McCune, Director of Government Relations, and with me today is Yesenia Dote, Manager of State Relations, and Clark Princell, Manager of Federal Relations. Each year in September, Government Relations reaches out to all the city departments to build our legislative agenda, which is based upon issues that may be discussed during the legislative process and to even gather legislative ideas. We combine that information and then brief each council member one-on-one and the mayor for their perspective on those items and learn about other items that they may have interest. From there, we compile the draft legislative agenda, and today we present the items that are relevant to your subcommittee. For both the federal and state legislative processes, we have used a set of guiding principles that help us to filter through legislation and how we should initially respond when things are introduced. Most items of legislation typically fall into one of these principal categories. So the guiding principles, which we present to you today as well, are one, to preserve, this is for the state legislative process, one, to preserve state shared revenues. Two is always to work on opposing unfunded mandates. Three, to protect local authority. And four, of course, to preserve water resources. And again, most legislation that we face and work on falls into one of those categories. Things that fall out of that boundary, we would typically bring to council as well. And what we do typically is during the legislative process, brief the council individually about every other week during the process. So to present the state legislative agenda items today, I will pass it over to Yesenia.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the subcommittee. As Frank mentioned, the state agenda is put together by having conversations with the various departments of the city and also by having our meetings with the council members and the mayor. So the first item that I'm going to discuss relates to short-term rental. As you all know, over the past several years, short-term rentals have become very popular, and that popularity has had some unintended consequences for our neighborhoods in the city of Phoenix and other cities throughout the state. And so to that end, we know that the rise of short-term rentals has reduced the availability of housing and has also led to a loss of economic benefits derived from hotels and other tourism industries. And so the legislature last session passed a bill that would allow the city to have a little bit more oversight over short-term rentals. And it is my understanding that next month staff will be coming to present on that because the city will be taking action to adopt those changes at the local level. Furthermore, the legislature has been holding interim ad hoc committee meetings to discuss what more can be done to address the issues that short-term rentals have created in neighborhoods and communities across the state. And so in addition to that, last week a bill was pre-filed by Representative Blanc, and what that bill would do, it would repeal the preemption that was put by the state in 2017 on cities. So that is the first piece of legislation that has been introduced related to short-term rentals, but it is my understanding that more is to come based on the work that this ad hoc committee is doing. And so with that being said, staff recommends supporting efforts that continue to allow for more local control on short-term rentals. Affordable housing is another issue that has been a consequence of short-term rentals, primarily in other communities like Sedona and Flagstaff, but it's starting to become a big issue in the city of Phoenix. And so we know that demand for affordable housing has been increasing in Maricopa County. Last session, the legislature appropriated $15 million to the Housing Trust Fund, which is there to provide flexible funding source to meet the housing needs in low-income families in Arizona. And so staff recommends supporting funding for the Housing Trust Fund and also any other efforts that adequately address the affordable housing issue. Another issue that we will be advocating for is for the state to provide funding or more resources in the area of homelessness. We know that the city of Phoenix, through the Phoenix Cares program, has done a lot of work to address the homeless issue in the city, but we recommend supporting efforts that increase these resources and support regional efforts across Maricopa County and the state. Per our conversations with Councilwoman Guardado and yourself, Chairman, we will be tracking and participating in any stakeholder discussions as it relates to methadone clinics. We know with the passage of the bill last year, which Senator Brophy McGee sponsored, there has been some implementation that needs to be done by the state, and so we will be sure to track any efforts that relate to stakeholder meetings and also any potential changes that may come legislatively.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Go back to the housing and the homelessness. Is there any effort at the state to actually address housing or state-run housing for mentally ill people? Because so many of the homeless, it's mental illness, and they can't last very long in housing. So we need to address that in some fashion.
Yes, Madam Chairman, Councilwoman Williams. So last session, the $15 million that we're appropriating to the Housing Trust Fund, 3.5 million of that was specifically designed for individuals with severe mental illness. And it is my understanding that the Arizona Department of Housing has been working with stakeholders to develop either a grant system for nonprofits and other organizations that are working to meet the requirements of the statute, meaning like what kind of programs and services and housing options can they provide for individuals that have severe mental illness. And it is my understanding that the efforts to address these issues are going to continue as we move into the upcoming legislative session.
That amount of money is so minimal. It's a drop in the bucket to the need, so I'm really concerned about how it goes forward.
We will be sure to be part of those conversations and as we update the council as legislation moves forward, we'll be sure to bring items that relate to housing and people with mental illness to you and others as well. From our environmental programs, the Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund, it's a program that exists currently within the Department of Environmental Quality. And what this program is designed to do is to remediate any contamination within groundwater. The program has not been fully funded in several years, and last year it was funded at the $15 million level, but unfortunately the funding came from fund sweeps within the department. So they took funds from the recycling fund and from the air quality fund, which are important funds for the city in other areas that we address. And so we've been having conversations with legislators to ensure that they appropriate WRF appropriately through the general fund, because in the city of Phoenix, we currently have about 12 contaminated groundwater sites, and we want to make sure that the resources at the state level exist to be able to remediate that water whenever the time comes that we need to utilize it for drinking purposes. And lastly, supporting any efforts to get funding from the state to the Arizona Commission of the Arts. Over the past several years, the state has appropriated $2 million to the commission, and this year the commission requested an appropriation of $2 million as well from the state, and so we will be supporting those efforts. And with that, I'll pass it over to Frank.
And those are the items on the state agenda related to the committee, and at this point, we will present the federal items on the legislative front. And for those, we have two guiding principles that we operate from at the federal level, and that, of course, is promoting fiscal sustainability and protecting local authority as well. To present the federal agenda today, we'll have Clark Prinzel, Manager of Federal Affairs.
Thank you, Frank. Madam Chairwoman and committee members, so I'll start with the Parks Department. So on behalf of the Parks Department, we will continue to support the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This was a fund that was created in 1965, and throughout the years, the Parks Department has utilized to fund not only new parks, but also improvements in existing parks. And then also to continue to support the city's efforts for the Rio Salado and Rio Salado Oeste projects within the Salt River. And this will mostly focus on continuing to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, which has jurisdiction over the land within the river, but also other departments as well that may have grant opportunities for projects above, beyond the banks of the river. On behalf of the Environmental Programs Department, we'll continue to support the Brownfields program. This is a program that provides federal funding to help the environmental assessment, cleanup, and redevelopment of brownfields that exist throughout the city and has been utilized in the past throughout the city. On behalf of the Sustainability Department, we'll continue to pursue grants to support the expansion of the electric vehicle infrastructure throughout the city. continuing to sustain and hopefully grow our urban tree canopy throughout the city, and then also to encourage renewable energy projects not only within the city but within the region as a whole. On behalf of the Housing Department, we'll continue to support and request increased flexibility within the Section 8 and Housing Choice Voucher Program, continuing to support the rental assistance demonstration and continuing to encourage us to receive an increased eligibility in units, and then also continue to advocate for the continuation of the low-income housing tax credit, which is an important tool for the Housing Department as they look to increase affordable housing throughout the region and the city. On behalf of Neighborhood Services, we'll continue to advocate for the continuation and continued funding of the lead-based paint hazard control program, as well as the weatherization and assistance program. Both are utilized within the city and our residents of lower income. On behalf of the Human Services Department, we'll continue to advocate for Head Start and Early Head Start, advocating for those funds to be used as flexibly as possible and to ensure that the region gets our fair share. Continuing to advocate for the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, or LIHEAP. This is a program that low-income families can apply for that helps them pay for their energy costs throughout the year. And then also encourage to advocate for as many homeless dollars as possible, both that are received by the city ourselves, but also the continuum of care. And then again, requesting as much flexibility as possible so that both the city and the regional can apply those dollars to where we see best fit and what works best for the region.
Can I just ask a question on that? So on the Head Start Early Start program, do you guys have like a map of where we have those programs, and also like where we want to also expand those programs?
Madam Chair, Council or Vice Mayor, I can work with the Human Services Department, and I'm sure we can get that information for you.
Because I think that'd be good for our offices to know, like how much more do we need, and then how much is it that we actually have, you know, especially in areas where we are in desperate need of it. I think that'd be great. Thank you.
And then, Madam Chair, and then for the Arts and Culture Department, continuing to support the funding for the National Endowment of the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities. These are two programs that are utilized by citizens and organizations throughout the region to support arts and culture within the region. And then lastly, within the City Manager's Department, focusing on the 2020 census, ensuring that the Census Bureau itself has the funding that it needs to ensure that a complete and accurate count can occur, and that the staff that we've assigned to the census has the support they need, both in Washington, D.C., and then also in the regional offices located here and in Denver as well.
Madam Chair and council members and Vice Mayor, if you guys have any questions, we can take any. Otherwise, we are recommending that for these items related to the state and federal agendas, that you guys recommend approval to work forward and pursue these items.
Any comments?
I
Or
do
questions?
have, yeah, I do. So on the different, like the methadone, dealing with the methadone clinics, with the housing crisis, with our homeless issues, and also on the short rentals. I think it's important, because one of the things that I think that I would like to see different, because people, like our constituents, come to us for everything, right? When we had the issues with the methadone clinic, right, they came to us. They didn't go to their state reps, right? They come to the city for any issues that they might have. And I think I would like to see if there's a way where we could do as legislation, and I know that state reps are super busy once legislation starts, but I don't know if there's a way where we can work with them, where we can have like different type of meetings within the districts, where the legislator and the city council member, if they like, would come together with the constituents and being able to explain to them, okay, this is what we're pushing forward, right? Like I know that with Senator McGee, I think we've done Councilwoman Stark and myself, we've done really good job working with her, and I think that's produced a lot of good things for certain parts of our district. But I think this is an issue that these are issues that everyone talks about. And when people think about homelessness, they're always like, Betty, what are you doing about it, right? And I think it's good for them to see us all working together on how is it that we're going to tackle these different issues that are I think incredibly important. Like, how are we going to deal with, with the housing situation, right? Like, I mean, rents are skyrocketing, and I think like we need to, at least figure out a plan with our legislators on how is it that we can support them, and what are the things that we need to do here at the city level within our constituents, right? Like, whether it is helping them mobilize people to the capital, or whatever kind of support that they need. I think that's also important. So those were some of my ideas on that. And then I think also like on the census, right? Like, we've been briefed on the census a lot, and like I would still like to see a more detailed plan on how we're gonna get to those constituents that just won't open the door, right? Like, I think we have a good plan on how we're gonna get to constituents, that for the most part will fill it out, and that, with these reminders, I think we'll get more people. But I'm still a little concerned that we don't have a very detailed plan on how we're going to get to those constituents that don't open their door, and that are mistrustful, and that just are just nervous that that information is going to be used against them. I don't think that I saw something, a plan that would definitely get to that. And obviously, if I'm opening up my mouth, I want to be helpful. And how is it, especially some parts of Maryville, like I definitely want to get a super accurate count in my district, and I know that everyone else does as well. So I'd be more than happy to help on how do we figure that out.
Thank you for those comments. I agree with working with our legislature. I think there are some cases where I know there's areas that I represent that I'm sure the legislative members don't want to work with me. So, but whenever we can, I think that's a great idea. Maybe invite them to coffee chats. I've done that with Senator McGee, and but I think that's great, because when we can open up the doors and have that dialogue, it's important. Real quickly too, as far as the issue of homelessness, is there any discussion about tenant laws? I know it's very easy to boot people out of their apartment, and that's when the homelessness begins. So hopefully we'll monitor that. But have you heard anything from any of the legislature about that?
Yes,
Okay.
Councilwoman Stark. Earlier last month, Representative Epstein reached out because she's starting to do some research, and Spencer from NSC and myself went to go meet with her, and as well as a member of his staff to start talking about this, because there are some conversations happening, and I believe that some members want to introduce legislation as it relates to tenant rights, but we have not seen any language. It was just an initial meeting to learn more about the issue.
Well, that's good news. I appreciate it. Any other comments, questions? So can I get a motion then? A recommendation?
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any? Ayes have it. And here comes Inger. She's excited to tell us about everything that's happening in the world of parks and recreation.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I've brought a whole host of folks today to talk to you. This is part of the team that we have. I'm going to introduce them in a second, but we also have some folks in the audience. All of our management staff was going to be here today because it's really important for you to see all the great things that we do to make this city a great place to live, visit, and play. So today for the presentation, I have Tracy Crockett, who's our Assistant Director in charge of all the operations related to maintenance and programming the recreation. Joe Diaz, our Principal Landscape Architect. We have Alonzo Avitia, the Deputy over Natural Resources, and Judy Weiss, who's the Deputy over the Parks Development Team. In the audience, there's Cynthia Aguilar, Danielle Poveromo, and Esther Avila, and they all have various areas in the city that they manage with the maintenance and the recreation. So we'll quickly go through some of the great things that we're doing in the Parks and Recreation Department. As you know, we have a very large system. We have over 184 parks. We have over 9,000 acres. Many of the parks were built in the 60s and 70s. The oldest park is Verde Park. And so, we've got a wide range of types of facilities and infrastructure that we have in our system. The preserves, we have total of 10 different areas of preserves. Again, over 36,000 acres. We've added some areas to the preserves. South Mountain is going to be coming up on its 100th year anniversary in 2024. Again, a great milestone and very important. For the longest time, it was the largest municipal park in the United States. We have two of those still. We have number 2 and number 3. Scottsdale, unfortunately, beat us out because they bought some more land. Lots more mountain trails, 242 miles of trails in our mountains. That's something that really sets us apart from a lot of other programs and a lot of other municipal recreation facilities. Park buildings, we have over 270 buildings, many community centers, restroom buildings, historic buildings, you can see there, Tovrea Castle, our maintenance buildings. The Stevens House, which is located, if I can point right there, with the green, that is 138 years old. So again, these buildings, they require maintenance improvements to be able to sustain their longevity. Park amenities, we have a wide variety of park amenities, swimming pools. The average age of our swimming pools is 53 years old. And so at some point we need to address, do we have enough pools? Do we need more pools? Or should we modify the types of pools we do have? So that'll be something that we talk about in the coming months. Playgrounds, we have 280 play structures throughout the system. Our goal is to replace those every 12 years, and I'll talk about our funding source for that. Athletic fields, again, we have soccer fields and multi-use fields, baseball, softball. Multi-use fields, you see an increase in things like lacrosse. People use our baseball and softball fields for cricket. And so we have a wide variety of uses of our athletic fields as well. And then sports field lighting. Lots of sports field lights, area lights, and we've been going to LED, which again is more sustainable and is also a better quality for the environment. Park funding sources. We do have the Parks Preserve Initiative Fund, which I just mentioned. That fund, we get about $28 million a year through that fund. It's a dedicated source of revenue through a tax that was voted on by the voters, 83% approval rating. And again, 40% is for the preserves, 60% of that is for flatland or urban parks. Impact fees, which are in designated areas, areas of growth, bond funds, which we haven't had available for a really long time, community development block grants that we get through neighborhood services, and other grants and donations. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy Crockett, who's going to tell you about some of our recently completed projects in the system.
Good morning again. I'm Tracy Crockett, the Assistant Director for the department, and I'll go through a few highlights of recently completed projects, generally all completed within the last 5 years, and also important to note that we do community meetings to work with the community in design and implementation of our programs and facilities. First, we have Washington Park. This park, pretty much the entire park, has received renovations within the past few years, and you see a number of things, including a tennis center, clubhouse facility, our challenge course, which is very similar to like a Ninja Warrior course, and some lighting and other improvements within the park. We have Mahatok Park, located off of 7th Avenue in Dobbins. You can see some before and after pictures from the improvements, and again, full renovation of the park. And we've really seen an increased use, especially with the play area with that park. Willow Park on 27th Avenue in Van Buren has also received renovations. You can see in the before and after significant improvements to especially the ramadas, the playground. We added something unique here. That little W is a soccer wall, because we know that there are a lot of soccer players that utilize this park. And so that is another one of our sites. Also, dog parks have become a growing amenity in parks and recreation in general. Within the past few years, we've added 5 dog parks from north to south within our park system, and these all have pens for large and small dogs. And so I will turn it over to Joe Diaz, and he will talk about projects in process.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, I've been asked to talk to you about a few of the projects that are in progress at this time. As Tracy mentioned, we have a significant a continued community effort to speak with the community to make sure that not only are we building things that are great, but building things that they want. And so all these projects fall into that category. And the first one I'd like to talk to you about is Cesar Chavez Community Center, located on 35th Avenue and Baseline Road. It is our first full-size community center since 2007. And it's going to be approximately 32,000 square feet. Has everything in it that a normal community center would have, a gymnasium, classrooms, but something unique, or some things unique to this one would be an elevated running track, which will be above the gymnasium, so you'll be able to look down into the gymnasium, and it'll be off an exercise room. We also have teaching kitchen and sensory room, which is the first for our Parks and Recreation Department, and that came directly from working with the community, and we were able to provide that as part of this design. Estimated completion on this is fall of 2021. Pinnacle Park soccer fields located on 32nd Street and Deer Valley Road. It'll be 2 full-size soccer fields with LED sports field lighting, a parking lot, and a restroom facility. And something unique about this project that was provided by the community was they were interested in a skate plaza. So we will be installing a skate plaza near the parking lot area. Deem Hills Park Phase 3. This is a continued construction and development on an existing park site. It's already has 2 full-size soccer fields as well as parking and a dog park. What we'll be adding there will be some pickleball courts, a tennis court, some large group ramadas, and a volleyball court. All those were vetted with the community, and they were very interested in those developments. One thing unique about this one would be the natural water harvesting. So this will be our first true water harvesting project, and where we'll be collecting rainwater and hopefully providing that water to the existing vegetation as well as new vegetation. Lanang Park renovation, 26th Street and Broadway Road. This is a 0.2 acre park. It's one of our smaller parks. But what we're finding is these small parks are just as important as our large parks. And they often become the only green space in the community. And so we've worked with the community. We'll be installing a brand new playground there. There's no playground now. So brand new playground, a basketball area, and some open turf area as well as some shade trees to make sure that we meet our tree and shade master plan. Iototo Park is another one of those small parks. This one's 0.4 acres. And we've worked with the community on this one as well. It will be receiving a half-court basketball court as well as a shaded playground and turf and shade trees. Margaret T. Hance Park, Phase 1, which is the new playground area. It's going to be a new playground experience. There's going to be opportunities for water play as well as traditional structure play. There are also some web climbing and some sand areas where kids can play in the sand. It's going to have engineered shade and natural shade. And I will turn the time over to Alonzo Vita, who's the Deputy Director of our Natural Resources Division.
Thank you, Joe. Alonzo Vita, Deputy Director for your Natural Resources Division. Wanted to talk about a few of the projects that are already completed in our mountain parks and preserves, starting with South Mountain. Pima Canyon trailheads, whether you're entering from the east side, north side, or just down the Central Avenue into South Mountain, it's all been touched as far as an improvement project. We're very proud of the function of the space. It obviously fits the landscape, as you can see here. We got really creative with Big and Little Ramada as far as the naming, but they're right in the center there. And Desert Foothills of the east side all boast obviously great interface with the public and the use, but also the facility itself, whether it's gender-neutral restrooms, increasing the infrastructure as far as water system and sewer system. Excuse me. Phoenix Mountain Preserve. Lincoln at Paestoy here. The park entry is South Mountain has the new monument coming into, so you understand you're going to a City of Phoenix property as far as the park property. Aesthetically, as you can see, very progressive. It also fits the landscape as well. Not only did it aesthetically improve the space, but it also functionally improved the space as well. Again, people don't necessarily have to go into a parking lot, turn around, three-point turn, go back out. The flow is much better. The use is much better. The hiking community really comes in, does it quickly, gets their workout in, and wants to leave. So we really updated our spaces for that reason as well. As part of our adaptive access management plan, public driven by that plan, these were all overall improvements that were requested by the community. Sonoran edge protection, just as important. We have property up in the Sonoran Preserve, north end of Phoenix. Imagine there as well, the use is very high, but we also have interaction with the public in respect to the use of the property. So we wanted to make sure we protected that property, not necessarily from wildlife. Obviously, they can still go back and forth, but this is really more for that vehicular use, which causes impact and negative conditions for that property. Dean Hills, another property that received a facelift here, as you can see to the left before. Just an older infrastructure, really dated. If you look to the right, you see it just a better blend, more sustainable material as far as what it's built out of, and really fits the use, along with LED lighting and drinking fountains. I'll turn it back over to Joe to talk about upcoming projects.
So first, we'd like to talk about the South Mountain Park and talk about some of the improvements we're doing there. Dobbins Lookout, which is a prominent lookout out at South Mountain, and it overlooks the downtown area as well. As you can see the East Valley and the West Valley from this location. There is a historic ramada up there that was built with the Civilian Conservation Corps back in the 20s that needs some improvements. And so we're going to go back and renovate that. We're working with Historic Preservation on that project, and we're looking to start construction soon on that project. A new ranger station, which will be located near the entrance of the park, which would create a better connection between the community and the residents that utilize the facility with the rangers that we have housed out of there. South Mountain Park preserved trails. A few years back, we did a trails master plan. It was about a year-long process with the community to develop a new trails master plan for this area. This process is going to help us build new trails that the community would like to see, but as well as remove some of those spider trails or those non-designated trails that are created. And it'll help revegetate those areas and bring it back to its natural state. Now moving more towards the Phoenix Mountain Preserves area, and this is in conjunction with the project that Alonzo spoke about with the Summit Trailhead and the entrance there at Piestewa. This is just a little bit further north in the next phase. We'll be doing improvements on Mojave Ramada area, Hopi Ramada area, which will include renovations of historic ramadas, installation of 2 new restroom facilities, and improvements to the circulation, both the walking pedestrian circulation and the parking. We expect to add approximately 43 new parking spaces to this area. And then on the other side of the Piestewa Peak, which is the Dreamy Draw area, we're going to be doing some improvements there as well. You can see on the left the existing Dreamy Draw parking lot. It's more of a triangular shape. It's not very efficient. And so we'll be working with a designer and a construction company to come in and reorganize that space. We expect to have an additional 97 parking spots, so it's going to increase it dramatically. But we're also working with the water department on their project. Yeah, they're going to be putting in a new water line, and so we're coinciding our project with them to make sure that it's the minimal community impact. And then the proposed Sonoran Preserve acquisition, we're looking at acquiring an additional 537 acres near Sonoran Desert Drive and just west of Cave Creek Road. We're working with state land to acquire this land. It has a lot of natural vegetation. You see the saguaros and natural shrubs, but also some great washes. And one item that was brought up a little bit earlier, and sorry we don't have a slide for it, is the Cholla Trail. So we've been working with Dig Studio, who's our designer on board for that contract, as well as with the developer on locating the best location for that trail. We have a meeting with them earlier this a couple of weeks ago, and provided them some potential designs, and they haven't got back with us yet, but we're expecting to hear from them very soon. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Tracy.
Next, I would like to highlight some of our partnerships. Our department benefits greatly from successful partnerships with other departments, entities, and organizations. Our partnerships allow us to maximize our reach of recreation to Phoenix residents. In the picture, the back picture, that is actually the course at Washington Park, and that was funded through Fiesta Bowl Charities. Another partnership is the Levine School District. We are partnering with them. They are building a new school off of 55th Avenue and Carver Road. They will also build a park/play area with some of the amenities listed above. And the community, we are providing the fields, the lights for the fields, for the athletic fields, and the community will be able to use these fields in the evening for play and for a reservation. The school district will pay for the ongoing maintenance, and the community will also have access to the basketball court. So this is a great example of two public agencies coming together for maximum benefit for the public. We also appreciate partnering with other city departments, such as neighborhood services. Through their CDBG funding, we were able to identify a number of projects in low to moderate income areas as defined by HUD, and these types of projects are listed on the slide. I mentioned Fiesta Bowl Charities prior, but they are also partnering with us through our partnership with Hants Park Conservancy and Phoenix Community Alliance. We received a $2 million sponsorship from Fiesta Bowl Charities for the new play area at Hants Park. The Fiesta Bowl Charities donation is part of their legacy gift for the 50th anniversary of the Fiesta Bowl. And another great partnership is with the city of Scottsdale and the San Francisco Giants at the Papago Park Baseball Complex. The project includes new fields, an existing field renovation, improved lighting, and parking improvements. Once built out, the facility will maintain space for public access and use. And I'll turn it over to our Deputy Director of Management Services, Judy Weiss.
Good morning, members of the subcommittee. I'm Judy Weiss, Deputy Director of Management Services Division, and I will discuss how the department is tracking trends to stay cutting edge. Excuse me. Old L-shaped pools are competing with aquatic centers and water play features that we have currently, and so we will look towards the future to add those types of aquatic amenities as we move forward. In addition, all new restroom facilities in parks and at trailheads are being outfitted with gender-neutral restrooms. Resources are being used to transform and upgrade older and outdated facilities. Some examples include underused tennis courts converted to mini pitches, splash pads rather than full public pool facilities is a trend where the department is implementing wherever possible. We promote healthy, active activities in our parks with the Fit Phoenix program facilities, which include marked and designated walking paths in parks throughout the city. Playgrounds are being upgraded, as mentioned, on a pretty regular basis, which allows us to take advantage of the latest trends. Playgrounds can now use technology for kids to blend outdoor family fun with the excitement of kid-friendly mobile games that encourage both imaginative free play and exercise. Pickleball is one of the most popular sports right now. I'm sure you've all played it. We have the most outdoor courts in the entire valley with 34 courts. Dog parks, not so much a trend anymore, but still very active and heavily used and very popular. And we have 12 of them now throughout the city. We take advantage of any new and proven technologies. Examples include automated irrigation systems, which help to save water, and automatic door and gate closure mechanisms to help with security and operations management. Already mentioned is LED lighting. This type of lighting saves time and money with long life and efficient lighting. We deploy it in parks with area lighting, sport court lighting, and now even with sports field lighting. Having an outdoor gym is a trend we have used recently, installing specially made equipment that simulates gym equipment, only outside. It's usually in or near playgrounds, so adults are able to work out while their children play nearby. And as already mentioned, partnerships are a very important trend that is used as much as we can to provide our residents with the most sustainable, high-quality projects. Partnerships really allow the department to provide a facility with little to no maintenance costs, and with certain public-private partnerships, a revenue share that can be reinvested into the park system. So we cannot provide the level of service and amenities that we do without our very many partners. So I'll turn it back to Inger.
So as you can see, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, we have a vast department, lots of really great things to do, but we need some tools to guide our goals and direction. So one of those tools is a tree and shade master plan. That is something that's been in place since 2010 and is in the process of being kind of updated as well. But it's important because it helps us with our goal of making sure that our parks have 25% or more shade coverage in the park. Our play database, which helps us manage our assets. You can see there's a lot of assets to manage. We need to keep track of those. And this is something that was developed by the Parks Development team to make sure that we can track them. We have pictures, we have deeds and information so that we can go to one source to get all that information. And also know when we replace it last to know, is it time to replace it again. Strategic goals, plan goals. These goals help all of our team keep on track for making sure that we're keeping our facilities safe, clean, accessible, and inviting, and also providing all the services we need to make sure that our parks are not only doing the best to preserve, but also being socially equitable. And then the last thing I want to tell you is this was our master plan that we did in 1988. It is due for an update, and we'll be coming back in the next several months to make sure that we go out for some sort of bid process to make sure that we update this and keep us going in the right direction. 1988 was great, but as we know, the city has gone grown a lot since then. In fact, if you look back to that plan, I think it only projected that we were going to have a population of 1.4 million. We know it's more than that. So we have changed. We need to change with the times. We need to update this plan. So, you know, there's lots to do to make sure that Phoenix is the place that you want to live, visit, and play. And so Parks and Recreation Department is part of that. We have a fantastic team, and we wanted to share that with you today just to make sure that you knew all the great things that we were doing, because sometimes we forget to toot our own horns. So we're here tooting today.
Thank you so much for that update. I really appreciate it. I know yesterday I was at Rose Mofford, and we partnered with AARP and FitLot and opened up our first FitLot in the city. That was pretty exciting. So I welcome all the partnerships we have. Were there any comments or any questions, or Councilman?
No, thank you all for this. This is great for us. I think being new is really helpful. I had a question on the Toto Park. Is there a date? And then also, I know there's a land, Boy Scouts land, and so how does that work? I would want to get explained if that's a possibility.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Councilman Garcia. So we are working, Iatoto, we plan to, we're working the plans right now. We plan to break ground sometime in the early part of the year, and it should be done before the summertime. So we're hoping May. I think that's the timeline, depending on how we can get the construction going. And then we've been working with the Boy Scouts and the folks on that property, so we're still working through, is there some way we can acquire that property there at the Boy Scout camp in South Mountain? And if there is, we'll find a way. So we are working with them. We've had conversations as recently as this week.
Any other comments or questions? And I'm sure you'll chat with Jerry about Choya. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. So we are now on call to the public again, and we have no new cards. So future agenda items, are there any others you want to add? We have the December agenda. We're going to talk about gated alleys again. So anything else you want to see, or?
The only thing, Inger. So I mean, sorry. It would just be nice, because I know we started talking about Little Canyon Park. So it'd be nice if at our next meeting, we could start having a discussion about going back out to the community, because that's a park that has been, and I know there's many reasons that we've talked about on why we haven't done enhancements there, but if next month we can definitely start rolling the ball on that and try to figure out how do we move forward with that park.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. Anything else? Okay, we can adjourn. Thank you.